So we just got some very interesting news that's quite amazing that details how poverty actually fell during the year of 2020 due to the result of the stimulus checks and massive federal spending, as well as the unemployment aid. So this is a Washington Post article that details the following. I'll read a little bit of the article and give you some facts afterward. U.S. poverty fell overall in 2020, a surprising decline, largely due to the swift and substantial federal relief that Congress enacted at the start of the pandemic to try to prevent widespread financial hardship as the nation experienced the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. The U.S. Census Bureau reported poverty fell to 9.1% in 2020 after accounting for all the government aid, the lowest rate on record and a significant decline from 11.8% in 2019. Nearly 8.5 million people were lifted out of poverty last year. Wow. An unprecedented change in a single year that was largely attributed to the stimulus payments. Poverty in the United States is defined as a family of four living on less than about $26,250 a year. I want to point out, since they just threw that number in our face, half of workers in this country make $30,000 a year or less. Allow me to continue. As the economy recovers from the depths of the coronavirus pandemic, White House officials are hoping that more Americans will be able to find good paying jobs that will keep them out of poverty. But deep inequalities remain, and there are troubling signs the recovery could stall. Black and Hispanic women continue to lag behind in the recovery, along with Americans without college degrees. Meanwhile, strong job gains earlier in the summer have faded as surging coronavirus cases, mostly among the unvaccinated, weigh on spending and hiring. So with that being said, I want to give you a couple of facts. As I stated previously, while tens of millions of Americans suffered mightily from food hardship in 2020 and are still suffering mightily, the nation avoided mass starvation, mostly because the federal government stepped in to dramatically increase food and cash aid, said Joel Berg, chief executive of Hunger Free America, a national advocacy organization. Despite the better than expected report on food insecurity during the pandemic, 60 million Americans received food assistance from a food bank, food pantry, or other private charitable food assistance programs in 2020, an increase of 50% over the previous year, according to Feeding America, a national organization of 200 food banks. The majority of food banks in the group's network continue to report food insecurity that's significantly higher than in 2019, and food stamp enrollment continues to be on the way up. It's currently 2 million more than last year and 6 million more than in 2019. So consider that fact anytime you hear politicians say that we need to cut social welfare programs. Allow me to continue. Poverty would have jumped to 12.7% without the stimulus payments last year, the Census Bureau said, noting that the majority of job losses were among workers earning less than $34,000 who had little to no savings. By a second measure, which leaves out much of the federal stimulus payments, poverty rose to 11.4% from 10.5%. But experts said that figure does not capture the real world effect of the government aid. And I want to end with this. It remains unclear whether the reduction in poverty will endure beyond 2020. Sullivan, the economist from Notre Dame, and economist Bruce Mayer of the University of Chicago have been attempting to track poverty during the pandemic in real time. Their analysis shows a slight uptick in poverty in 2021 that worsened slightly in August as coronavirus cases surged again. So what does this tell us? What does this tell us? This basically debunks the lies that are spewed by ignorant people, liars, corrupt politicians, that federal spending is bad, especially during a pandemic, that social programs are bad, that stimulus checks are bad, they need to be means tested, that only certain individuals can receive them, that they won't really help people, that they won't really improve the lives of the population and what have you. All that's bullshit. And all this, oh, if we give people money, they won't return to work. So many states slash the federal unemployment aid, and studies showed that the states that slashed that aid, it didn't create more jobs. People didn't just flock back to the workplace. That's false. That's completely false. And this opens up another problem. The Democrats need to talk about this stuff. And once you receive the news from these types of studies, why doesn't it compel you to do more of it? To improve people's lives even more? Because when you do stuff like this is what brings people to the polls to vote for you. Not Donald Trump is bad and the Republicans are bad and they'll do bad things once they get in power. No, that won't work. Doing stuff like this, literally lifting people out of poverty and preventing people that would have otherwise fallen into poverty. We're talking about millions of people, right? From falling into poverty. I mean, that'll get people to go vote for you. That'll make people think better of you than they previously did. But they're not knowing that. It seemed like they gave you that one shot of adrenaline. And think about it like this. It was supposed to be $2,000 checks. It was only $1,400 because they said that on top of the $600 checks. What if it was $2,000? What if they didn't means test it as much? What if they didn't cut the unemployment insurance from $600 to $300? How much more would people have been helped if your government didn't screw you the way that they did in so many different cases? I mean, this is absolutely amazing. And they never talk about this stuff. They never tout these facts. They don't put these facts in your face. They don't say that the Republicans, all the Republicans voted against that reconciliation bill that provided the public with these good things. They don't talk about the fact that the Republicans were against the child tax credits. I mean, just awful messaging, completely tone deaf and ignorant messaging from the Democratic Party. And they really need to get their act together and bolster these arguments and really state these facts loud and clear so the American people will know who's really helping them. But these are just meager solutions. I hesitate to call them solutions, but somewhat of a solution to the great problems that we're enduring currently. I mean, as I stated before, it debunks those theories that the government is bad, the government shouldn't interfere, the government should do anything. Now, the government can't do everything, and of course, there's moments where you wouldn't want the government to intervene as much. But this notion that you can't spend during a pandemic, we have to cut spending, we have to cut social programs. Need I remind you back to the 1930s when FDR, quote unquote, saved capitalism, which he did, I agree. But I mean, he did things, he created programs that are incredibly popular that are still here today, established the first ever minimum wage, created a jobs program that employed 15 million workers in the federal government. I mean, unemployment insurance, something that our elected leaders today are hawkish against. I mean, so many things that are still around today. One of our great progressive leaders in the history of America, and people as in our politicians still struggle to come to terms with the fact that this is what the people want. They want good legislation that will improve their lives, but they're so afraid of being, accused of being a communist that they don't want to take these sort of steps. And they're also incredibly corrupt as well. You can't, leave that out of the question. But hopefully with studies like these continue to come out, and I'm sure they will, because, as long as you keep providing people with the, substantial relief and material well-being to improve their lives, these types of studies will keep occurring. And, we need the $3.5 trillion infrastructure package. That's honestly the biggest takeaway from this, because if we get that in conjunction with the previous things that the people have received from legislation that's been passed from the government, I mean, it'll really improve a lot of people's situations. There's really good legislation in that $3.5 trillion bill, and it's currently being debated, and hopefully the side that is for it will end up winning, but we'll just have to wait and see for the results.